A warm welcome to Diplomatic Channel. I'm Millicent Walker. Here are the highlights of the program. South Africa's Foreign Minister Naledi Pandor hints that Pretoria is considering its legal options over Russian President Vladimir Putin's possible arrest if he decides to attend the scheduled BRICS Summit in August in South Africa. The International Criminal Court, ICC, issued a warrant of arrest in March for Mr. Putin over the war crimes in Ukraine, putting South Africa in a dilemma as it prepares to host the summit of leaders that make up the BRICS group of nations. And EU leaders meet in Moldova for the European Political Community Summit. But before that, let's check other top stories in diplomatic circles.
Egypt and Turkey have agreed to restore full diplomatic relations. This move comes after a phone call from Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to Turkish leader Recep Tayyip Erdogan on his election victory. Both leaders have agreed to arrange the exchange of ambassadors immediately. Egypt and Turkey fell out in 2013 after Mr. Erdogan described Mr. Sisi's overthrow of Egypt's then-President Mohamed Morsi as an unacceptable coup. The two countries had backed opposition factions in Libya and were at odds over maritime borders in the gas-rich eastern Mediterranean in subsequent years. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak will travel to Washington on Wednesday, June the 7th for talks with US President Joe Biden. The leaders are expected to discuss trade as well as the war in Ukraine. The White House said the pair would also discuss the situation in Northern Ireland. The prospect of a full-blown free trade agreement between the two countries has waned since Mr. Biden took office and is not on the agenda. Instead, the UK is seeking deals with individual states, and agreements have already been signed with North, South Carolina and Indiana. Oman Sultan Haitham bin Tariq Al Said has met with Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi in Tehran. The visit comes 2 days after Moscow mediated a prisoner swap between Iran and Belgium. Both leaders had meaningful discussions on regional diplomatic and security issues. Oman has long been an interlocutor for the West with Iran, mediated the release of several foreign citizens and dual nationals. Oman helped secure the release of Belgian aid worker who was arrested in 2022 and sentenced to 40 years in prison and 75 lashes on charges including spying, in exchange for an Iranian diplomat sentenced to 20 years in prison in connection with a failed bomb plot in France. But dozens of foreigners and dual nationals remain in jail in Iran, most facing espionage and security-related accusations. Right groups have criticized the arrest as a tactic by Tehran to win concessions from the West by inventing charges which Tehran denies. Iran and Oman will sign at least 4 agreements in the fields of economy, investment and energy, and that Haitham and Raisi were due to discuss issues such as Tehran's strained ties with Egypt and Iran's disputed nuclear program. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has accused the West of supporting genocide in Ukraine through its backing for President Volodymyr Zelensky's peace plan. Speaking at a meeting with Burundi's Foreign Minister Alba Shingiro soon after landing in Bujumbura, he claimed the Ukrainian peace plan would destroy everything Russian in East Ukraine and Crimea. Though Lavrov did not offer evidence to support his claim, Russia has long accused the West of ignoring what it says is Ukrainian persecution of Russian language speakers in the eastern Donbas region and elsewhere. Burundi's Foreign Minister Alba Shingiro says Burundi has chosen to be on the side of solution and not on the side of the problems, and that the country has taken an abstentionist position, a position of neutrality, a position of non-alignment to prevent the Ukraine-Russia conflict from reaching other regions, more specifically the African continent. Zelensky's peace plan envisages the withdrawal of Russian forces from all Ukrainian territory, including Crimea Peninsula, which Moscow forcefully annexed in 2014. Speaking on the day when Russia accused Ukraine of launching its biggest ever drone attack on Moscow, Lavrov said the West was directly helping Kyiv to carry out such terrorist strikes by providing it with weapons and military equipment. Lavrov also took an aim at comments by U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham, saying they could be understood by encouraging the killing of Russians. Lavrov has visited the African continent at least 3 times this year, while Ukraine Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba traveled to countries including Ethiopia, Rwanda, and Mozambique.
South Africa is considering legal options over the International Criminal Court pending an arrest warrant for President Vladimir Putin. The ICC had issued a warrant for Mr. Putin in March, accusing him of war crimes of forcibly deporting children from Russian-occupied territory in Ukraine. Earlier, foreign ministers had asserted their bloc's ambition to rival Western powers, but their talks in South Africa were overshadowed by questions over whether Russia's president would be arrested if he attended the summit in August.
This year, South Africa assumes the chair of BRICS and will host regional and international leaders during the 15th summit of the grouping in August.
South Africa is the current chair of BRICS, and we have agreed to focus on BRICS and Africa as the key thematic area, focused on accelerating partnerships between Africa and the BRICS countries.
BRICS ministers also spoke about the expansion of the bloc.
BRICS is a different structure. It's a new organization based on the principles of equality, mutual respect, consensus, non-interference, and strict adherence to the United Nations Charter.
There are many aspects of it. One part of it is actually to consolidate how the existing BRICS members are working with each other. The second part of it is how the BRICS engages non-BRICS countries. And the third part of it is how we look at potential expansion.
31.5% of the world GDP is produced by the 5 countries of BRICS, countries which also have 40% of the world population. So it's a very important asset. And we are working, this is maybe why of this big success that it's attracted.
This does discuss the current geopolitical environment and its impact on emerging markets.
First, be independent. Emerging markets and developing countries should manage their own affairs, and these affairs are up to ourselves. No one else has the right to lecture us, take away our right to follow a path that suits our own national conditions.
Another long-standing issue that Minister Naledi Pandor emphasized relates to the ICC warrant of arrest for Russian President Vladimir Putin.
The South African government is currently looking at what the various legal options are with respect to this matter. And I have indicated that it is something I believe the President would be the best person to speak about once they have reached a conclusion.
While BRICS ministers are in closed doors deliberating on different issues outside, Ukrainians are protesting, registering their dissatisfaction. They say that they do not want to see President Putin in South Africa.
Why International Criminal Court provided this warrant of arrest specifically for that? So what Russia is doing, they are forcefully separating children from their parents. They are providing Russian citizenship and changing personal data of those children. So this is absolutely illegal, and we hope that South Africa will stand with Ukraine on children's rights.
A former Nigeria acting High Commissioner to South Africa and former ambassador of Nigeria to the Republic of Venezuela with concurrent accreditation to Colombia and Ecuador, Ambassador Martins Cobham, joins me shortly. Former Nigeria acting High Commissioner to South Africa and former ambassador of Nigeria to the Republic of Venezuela with concurrent accreditation to Colombia and Ecuador, Ambassador Martins Cobham, welcome to Diplomatic Channel.
Thank you for having me.
South Africa is billed to host the BRICS Summit in August, and they've invited Russia's President Vladimir Putin. Do you see President Putin attending?
Absolutely. Absolutely. He has the commitment to attend that summit.
Well, we also know that South Africa is planning a law change over Putin's ICC arrest. Theoretically, Pretoria would be required to arrest him, considering the present law in the country. Do you think this could potentially open the door for Putin to honor the invitation? And that's if he was skeptical about it before.
That is rather extrajudicial to have Putin arrested in
South Africa.
Yes, that is rather extrajudicial. And I want to say that we have a reference some few years ago, South Africa was equally requested to hand over Omar Bashir of Sudan. And then I was there, and it didn't come to pass. I would rather say that the ICC or the West are reaching their brief. There have been many culprits of ICC statutes, and some of them, I don't want to mention names, are yet to be brought to book. So why zero in, or probably, put the light on African or third world leaders? So I want to say that it will not fly. South Africa will, in my own opinion, call the bluff.
Some people say that Pretoria, they've granted diplomatic immunity to Russian officials, who are billed to attend the summit. Also, the Foreign Affairs Department says, these immunity are sort of standard procedure. But then let's look at South Africa refusing to condemn Russia's invasion of Ukraine, insisting that it remains neutral. What do you make of that?
Well, let me say that the word condemnation appears rather strong. Condemnation should be left to the opinion, or rather to desires of the various countries that have perceived this Russian invasion in Ukraine as abnormal. You will recall that Russia, as it were, invaded Ukraine. But what the question to ask, for what reason was Ukraine, attacked? Russia would not allow the West, and in this sense, NATO, to have a foothold in former East Europe, so much so as the US would not want Russia or China to have a foothold in Cuba or Venezuela. So this is, in my opinion, merely proxy war. Unfortunately, Ukraine is being used as the battlefield. So long as the West keeps on supplying weapons to Ukraine, I think this war will blow into what I can call a war of attrition. But we only hope that South Africa and others that feels much as it does can call for a roundtable negotiation as a way out of this war. That's the way it should go. Because at the end of it all, the two countries or the countries involved will still have to go and have a talk to bury the hatchet and stop the craze called Russia-Ukrainian war. Everyone is suffering, be it Russia, be it the West, and of course Ukraine. So we cannot say that South Africa will just speedily or take a knee-jerk action and condemn Russia, bearing in mind that Russia is an ally.
Don't you think perhaps Russia could be said to have gone so deep in the war, the invasion of Ukraine, for it to have any sort of exemptions of international justice?
Well, I'd like to disagree with you. Instead of war, except there are some intervening variables, or perhaps some discussion, Russia, as of now, has an upper hand. It will not want to probably retreat. Rather, it will look forward to some proxies to intercede and provide a platform for negotiation.
When we look at, how far the war has gone in right now, do you think that there is room for that? I mean, Ukraine says they're not willing to let go of any territory. Russia is insisting, that it owns, is annexing some of the territory.
Millicent, let's be rather realistic in this matter, not idealistic. Russia has the arsenal to wage this war as much as it does. Ukraine is merely a pawn on the chessboard. Consequently, Russia has what I don't want to mention the nuclear arsenal, but it has enough to confront the West. Ukraine is only the crying baby in this matter, and Ukraine will suffer more. What should be thinking now is that we should have a kind of an approach to call for peace and have negotiation. That's, at least for now.
But let's talk about back in May last month, where the U.S. ambassador alleged a Russian ship was loaded with ammunition and weapons in Cape Town the previous year, though he has apologized for those claims. Do you see both countries, the U.S., South Africa, having diplomatic fallout and relations?
Let me quote you. He said he has apologized. That's enough. Just apologized. So we go back to status quo antebellum. There won't be any fallout. Both countries need themselves. There won't be. I know that much, that there won't be any fallout between the two countries. If anything at all, there will be efforts, perhaps through the back room, to make amends.
Even with the fact that they are insisting they're neutral in this, between Ukraine and Russia.
That is what you and I know in the public. You know what there are things we don't know, behind closed doors.
And that sounds like diplomatic language.
Thank you very much, Millicent. But there's always an opening to make peace. Because we all don't get anything at all fighting.
I want to quickly get your thoughts on the plans, and this is to push for a joint currency. And this is among the members of the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, as well as South Africa. Do you see this happening, and how could this change things in terms of, what they've called the US dollar hegemony?
Thank you, Minister, for that. Let me say, against the background of changing world economic order, I think the BRICS have come to stay. And we all better accept it, because China is a force to be reckoned with. And for some time, China, Russia, India, and even Brazil, so speaking of, have been at the receiving end. So I think these 5 countries will do their best to create this single currency, have a financial institution, at least to help themselves in those areas or that the Bretton Woods, IMF, and World Bank were unable to meet their needs and interests.
Do you think Nigeria should jump in on it, because they're thinking of expanding membership to include some African countries?
Well, I would not like to use the word jump in. Nigeria should consider to look at the merits and demerits of joining the BRICS. I can recall when I was still there in Pretoria, we studied overture to have Nigeria consider having engagement, at least at the level of observer, in the BRICS meeting. I want to say that the new administration should take bold steps and kind of commence business as unusual. Fair enough, President Bola Tinubu has taken the bullet on the subsidy issue. We should take more bold steps and do things unusually. Since, for now, the way we've been doing things have not really paid off. I mean, having less debt, more trading partners, let's say, become more export-oriented. And I want to say, if we join the BRICS, there will be the stimulation, the push for us to depart from the way we're doing things to maybe better ways. And I'm saying the BRICS serves as a catalyst for us to do things differently, at least in our economic sector. We may not have much to offer, so to speak, but I think the BRICS will serve as a complement to the African Continental Trade organ, so to speak. So, in my humble opinion, I think Nigeria should begin to take steps, consider looking at the good side of course, every human endeavor has demerits and merits. But I think for now, the BRICS stands to favor Nigeria in so many ways, to turn around the way we do things. And we stand a lot to gain from being a member of BRICS than being outside and observing.
Ambassador Martin Scobham, thank you for joining us on Diplomatic Channel.
Thank you, Millicent. You have a nice day.
Head of Public Policy, International Relations and Cooperation of South Africa, Clayton Monyela, has defended his country's participation in the recent joint Navy drills with Russia and China against the backdrop of the war in Ukraine. In an exclusive interview with Channels Television, Monyela spoke to our South Africa correspondent, Innocent Amosa, on the sidelines of the meeting of BRICS Ministers of Foreign Affairs and International Relations in Cape Town. Take a listen.
We've done military drills as a country with the United States of America. There was no noise. We've done with other countries like the UK and all other partners that we cooperate with internationally. This particular one that you're referring to was done at the same time. It was a joint exercise with China and Russia. Perhaps the only thing that people could raise, which would probably be an issue, was the timing of the drill. But the drill itself is nothing extraordinary. It's done all the time. And as I said, we've done it with many other countries, including the US. It coincided, this particular one coincided with the 1-year anniversary of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. So perhaps the timing thereof was unfortunate. But the drill itself, nothing out of the ordinary. Your guess is as good as mine. Where we are, what we can confirm is that the BRICS Summit in South Africa is planned between the 22nd and the 24th of August this year, 2023, in Johannesburg, Sandton Convention Center to be exact. The 5 BRICS countries are expected to participate because this is their summit. And because it's a summit level, we expect the heads of state. As to whether Russia will be represented by its president, it's a matter that will have to be processed. As you know, in South Africa, Cabinet has appointed an interministerial committee led by Deputy President Paul Mashatile to process the legal opinion that has been prepared by state law advisors on how South Africa should handle the matter of President Putin vis-a-vis the warrant. I'm told that IMC is meeting next week to process the final report for Cabinet. So let's give them time and space to work, and we'll get to know what the final outcome and the way forward is. And I'm sure there will be announcements in that regard. South Africa is hosting the summit in August. The 5 countries are expected to participate. I'm sure you recall that during COVID, the BRICS Summit was held virtually. So there are all sorts of options that can be explored in the event that the IMC recommends one particular option. For now, we're giving them time and space to do their work, and they will advise Cabinet in terms of the way forward, and you will get to know, because this will be a decision that will be announced to the public.
European leaders hold Security Summit in Moldova. More than 40 European leaders met in Moldova in a show of support for the former Soviet Republic, Ukraine, which indicated interest and applied to join the European Union after Russia's invasion. The European Political Community EPC Summit for the 27 EU member states and 20 other European countries took place at a castle 20 kilometers from the Ukrainian territory and near the Russian-backed breakaway region of Transnistria.
My president, together with G7 leaders, met the Global South leaders, and supported by G7 leaders was explaining to the Global South leaders that cannot be a Brazilian peace plan, a Chinese peace plan, a South Africa peace plan, when you're talking about the war in Ukraine. Russia should be deprived of instruments of aggression by the unanimous efforts of the international community. In peace formula of President Zelensky, you have items from 1 to 10. Item 1 is about nuclear security. Item 6 is about withdrawal of Russian troops from the whole territory. He listened very attentively. There was no immediate response, but again, his special representative Li Hui was given a very thorough and detailed information and briefings and the non-papers, and was meeting the people in person. So we will see. China is a wise country which understands its role in the international affairs. And if you start negotiations with Russia when part of your territory is occupied, This will mean the freezing of the conflict. That's the narrative, that's the desire they want to have, the idea they want to have, probably asking some countries to support this position, but the civilized community very clearly understands.
African officials and experts attended a two-day think tank forum in East China, where they refuted the debt trap allegations made by some Western politicians. Themed on rejuvenation and cooperation, the 12th China-Africa think tank brought together nearly 200 scholars and business representatives from 45 countries to pour wisdom in Jinhua City, east of China's Zhejiang province. And that's Diplomatic Channel this week. You can watch this and other episodes again on our YouTube channel /channels web and our channels playlist. I'm Millicent Walker. I'll see you next time.